Not all paths are straight. Some begin in dark alleys, filled with pain, shame, and wrong choices. But even so, they can still lead to the light. This is Raphael's story, a story of loss, downfall, temptation, and ultimately, redemption. As you listen, ask yourself, how many times have you felt on the edge of the abyss? And how many times did you believe there was no way back? Because Raphael believed that too, until he decided to rise. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon when Raphael heard the shouting coming from the living room. At 19 years old, he was already accustomed to the arguments between his mother and stepfather. But this time something was different. Marcus's tone carried a coldness he had never heard before, a determination that made the air in the house feel heavier. "I don't want that kid here anymore," Marcos shouted, slamming his fist on the kitchen table. "Look at the company he's been keeping. Yesterday I saw him with those good-for-nothings from the corner again. I won't allow him to bring trouble into my house." Raphael remained leaning against the hallway wall, his heart beating hard in his chest. He knew exactly who his stepfather was talking about. In recent months, he had gotten close to a group of neighborhood boys who didn't have the best reputation. It wasn't that he wanted to get involved with them, but in the outskirts where he lived, friendship options were limited, and those boys at least made him feel part of something. "Marcos, he's my son," said his mother, Consecu, with a choked voice. "He might be going through a difficult phase, but... Difficult phase? Consecu, open your eyes. The kid's getting mixed up with drug dealers, with thieves. Do you want the police to come here? Do you want some rival of these guys too? Show up at our door?" Raphael closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the words. He knew Marcos wasn't completely wrong. He had indeed gotten close to people who weren't good examples, but he didn't see it as a conscious choice to follow the wrong path. It was more like a need to belong somewhere, to have friends, to not feel completely alone in the world. "I've worked honestly for 20 years, Marcos continued, his voice getting louder and louder. "I built this house brick by brick. I support this family with dignity. I won't let some brat destroy everything I've achieved." Consecu was crying softly, and Raphael could hear the muffled sound of her sobs. She was a simple woman who had raised her son alone until she met Marcos when Raphael was 15. The stepfather wasn't a bad man. In fact, he had tried to be a father figure to Raphael in the early years, but the relationship between them was always tense. Marcos came from a traditional family and expected Raphael to follow in his footsteps. Study, get an honest job, start a family, but Raphael never managed to fully adapt to that family dynamic. "If he doesn't leave willingly, I'll throw him out by force," Marcos threatened. "I've warned you several times, Consecu, either him or me." Raphael felt a lump in his throat. He knew his stepfather well enough to know he wasn't bluffing. Marcos was a man of his word, and when he made a decision, he rarely went back on it. He took a deep breath and entered the room, interrupting the argument. "You don't need to kick me out," said Raphael, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'll leave." Consecu turned to him with eyes red from crying so much. "Raphael, my son, it doesn't have to be this way, ... "Yes it does, Mom," he replied, avoiding looking directly at Marcos. "I don't want to be a source of problems between you two." Marcos crossed his arms, observing Raphael with a mixture of relief and distrust. "Gret, I want you out of here by tomorrow morning." Raphael nodded and headed to his room. It was a small space with a single bed, an old wardrobe, and a desk where he sometimes tried to study. He looked around, trying to decide what to take. He didn't have many possessions. Some clothes, some school books he probably would never open again, an old cell phone, and little money he had managed to earn from some odd jobs. While packing his things in an old backpack, Raphael thought about where he could go. He didn't have many places to choose from. His paternal grandparents had died when he was a child, and his maternal ones lived in another state. The only friends he really had were exactly those whom Marcos criticized so much. He remembered Diego, a young man a few years older whom he had met a few months ago. Diego lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of the neighborhood, and always said that Raphael could count on him if he needed to. At the time, Raphael didn't pay much attention to the comment, but now those words seemed like a lifeline. The next morning, Raphael carried his backpack and said goodbye to his mother in the kitchen. Consecu tried to give him some money, but he refused, knowing she didn't have much either. Marcos had left early for work, thus avoiding an awkward farewell. promise me you'll take care of yourself?" asked Conceição, holding her son's hands. "I promise, Mum, and I promise I'll sort out my life." Raphael left home carrying more than just his physical belongings. He carried with him a mixture of hurt, hope, and a confused determination to prove he could be better than everyone thought. But he also carried the weight of uncertainty, not knowing exactly how he would make that happen. He walked through the neighborhood streets toward Diego's house, observing the morning movement. Street vendors were setting up their stalls. Children were running to school. Workers were waiting for buses at the stops. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, a place to go. Raphael, for the first time in his life, felt completely directionless. Diego's house was on a dirt road, surrounded by other simple and unfinished constructions. When he got there, he knocked on the door hesitantly. Diego opened with a wide smile, as if he was already expecting him. "Raphael, man, good to see you. Come in." The house was small and simple, but clean and organized. Diego had been living alone since he was 16, when his parents moved to the countryside and he decided to stay in the city. He supported himself with odd jobs and, as Raphael would discover later, with some activities that weren't exactly legal. "Fight with your stepfather again?" asked Diego, offering a chair for Raphael to sit. "Not exactly a fight. He kicked me out of the house." Diego made a surprised expression, but Raphael noticed there was something rehearsed about it, as if he already knew this could happen. "Wow, man, that's heavy. But look, you can stay here as long as you need. We'll manage." Raphael thanked him, feeling momentary relief. At least he wouldn't sleep on the street. But he also felt a pang of worry. He had known Diego for a short time and, although he liked him, he knew his reputation in the neighborhood wasn't the best. There were rumors that he was involved in petty theft and other illegal activities, but Raphael had never witnessed anything directly. In the first days living with Diego, Raphael tried to maintain a normal routine. He looked for work during the day, helped with household chores, and avoided asking too many questions about how Diego managed to get money to maintain the house. But it was impossible to completely ignore the signs. Diego left the house at strange hours, received suspicious visits, and always seemed to have money, even without a steady job. "Raphael, do you want to keep looking for jobs that don't exist, or do you want to earn real money?" asked Diego one afternoon. After another unproductive day of job hunting, Raphael knew that question would come sooner or later. "Depends on what you're offering. Nothing too much, man. Just some little things here and there. Nothing violent, nothing dangerous, just opportunities." Raphael was silent for a few minutes. He thought about his mother, about Marcus's words, about his own promises to straighten out his life. But he also thought about the hunger he sometimes felt, about the dependence he was creating on Diego, about the feeling of uselessness that grew with each day without getting a job. "What kind of opportunities?" he finally asked. Diego smiled. "Leave it to me. Tomorrow you'll see." The first opportunity that Diego offered Raphael seemed simple and almost harmless. It was a Tuesday morning when Diego woke him up earlier than normal, with coffee already made and a more serious expression on his face. "Today you're coming with me to work," said Diego, handing a cup to Raphael. "It's nothing complicated. I just need someone to keep watch while I handle some things." Raphael drank the coffee slowly, feeling the bitter taste in his mouth mixed with the bitterness of the situation. 3 weeks had passed since he left home, and his attempts to find honest work had been completely frustrated. He had gone to markets, stores, workshops, offering himself for any type of service, but always received the same answer. There were no openings, or he needed experience he didn't have. "What exactly do I need to do?" asked Raphael, trying to sound casual, but feeling nervousness growing in his stomach. "Just stay alert. If you see someone approaching or anything strange, you let me know. That's it." Diego explained that they would go to a nearby neighborhood where he had some business to resolve. He didn't go into details, but Raphael wasn't naive. He knew Diego was involved with petty theft, and this was clearly his official entry into that world. They took a bus to downtown. During the trip, Diego gave some basic instructions: how to act naturally, how to signal if something was wrong, how to behave if they were approached by someone. Raphael listened to everything attentively, but part of him still hoped it was just a test, that at the last moment Diego would say it was a joke. They got off at a stop near a popular shopping mall, frequented mainly by middle-class people. Diego took Rafael to a food court and pointed to an electronics store on the other side of the corridor. "I'm going in there to look at some equipment," Diego explained. "You stay here, have a soda, and just observe. If you see any security moving around a lot, or if you notice anything strange, you come to the store and ask about anything. That's my signal to leave." Rafael nodded, feeling his mouth dry. He bought a soda at a snack bar and sat at a table with a good view of the electronics store. He watched Diego enter the store and start talking to a salesperson about cell phones. Everything seemed normal, a common commercial transaction. For about 20 minutes, Rafael just observed the mall's movement. Families shopping, young people dating, elderly people walking slowly. Everything very normal and peaceful. He began to relax, thinking maybe he was exaggerating the situation. That's when he saw Diego heading to a more secluded section of the store, where more expensive equipment was kept. The salesperson who was helping him moved away to serve another customer, and Diego was alone for a few moments. Rafael saw when he quickly put something small in his jacket pocket. Rafael's heart raced. This was real. Diego was actually stealing something, and he was there as an accomplice, helping. He looked around, searching for security guards or surveillance cameras. He saw a security guard talking to someone near the mall entrance. Apparently inattentive, Diego continued in the store for a few more minutes, talking normally with the salesperson who had returned, asking questions about prices and product features. His naturalness was impressive. He really seemed like a customer interested in making a purchase. When Diego finally left the store, Rafael was sweating cold. They met in a mall bathroom, where Diego showed what he had taken, an expensive Bluetooth headphone, still in its packaging. "Simple as that," said Diego, storing the product in a backpack. "Now we just need to leave here naturally and go away." They left the mall separately, Rafael first and Diego a few minutes later. They met at the bus stop, and only then did Rafael allow himself to breathe with relief. It had worked. They had succeeded. On the way back home, Diego explained how he would sell the product. He had contacts who bought electronics without asking questions, paying about half the original value. It wasn't much money, but for half an hour's work, it was worth it. "Your share is 50 reais, sighed Diego, handing the money to Rafael. "Not bad for a start, right?" Rafael took the money with trembling hands. 50 reais that he didn't have to borrow, didn't have to beg to get. Money that was there, real, in his hands. But along with the financial relief came a strange sensation, a mixture of guilt and adrenaline. That night, Rafael had difficulty sleeping. He thought about his mother, imagining what she would say if she knew how he had gotten that money. He thought about Marcos and the harsh words he had said about Rafael getting involved with wrong people. For the first time, he began to understand that maybe his stepfather was right. But he also thought about the feeling of not being completely dependent on Diego, of having at least some money of his own. He thought about the difficulty of finding honest work, about how he was treated when he looked for jobs, as if he were a nuisance or a threat. In the following days, Diego proposed other similar opportunities. Rafael participated in a few more, always in the same scheme. He would keep watch while Diego stole small objects in different stores, cell phones, perfumes, brand-name clothes, never anything too expensive or flashy, always products that could be easily resold. Rafael got used to the routine and the adrenaline. He developed his own observation techniques, learned to identify security patterns in establishments, began to understand how the business worked, and, mainly, he began to like the money he earned. In 2 weeks, Rafael had earned more money than he could get in a month, working at any job his qualifications allowed. He could contribute to household expenses, buy his own things, even save a little. For the first time since leaving home, he felt minimally independent. It was Diego who suggested that Rafael try to do something alone. "You already know how it works," he said one afternoon. "You could try something small, just to see how you do. There's that big pharmacy near the station. There's always movement. The employees are busy. Could be good for you to test." Rafael felt his stomach churn with the suggestion. One thing was helping Diego, being just the lookout. Something very different was doing everything alone, being the protagonist of the theft. But he also felt a strange curiosity, a desire to prove to himself that he could do it. "I don't know, man. What if it goes wrong? If it goes wrong, you run away. Simple as that." but it won't go wrong. You're smart, you know how to do it. Raphael spent 2 days thinking about the proposal. He visited the pharmacy several times as a normal customer, observing the employees' routine, the location of cameras, the busiest hours. Without realizing it, he was planning his first solo theft. On Thursday morning, Raphael entered the pharmacy with his heart beating hard in his chest. He chose a medium traffic time, not so empty that his presence would draw attention, not so busy that it would be difficult to move. He walked through the aisles like a normal customer, picked up some cheap items as a disguise, and headed to the cosmetics section, where some more expensive products were kept. When he saw that no employee was looking directly at him, he quickly grabbed an imported perfume and hid it inside his jacket. He continued walking through the store, picked up a few more worthless items, and headed to the cashier. He paid for the cheap products naturally, briefly talked with the attendant about the weather, and left the store. Only when he was a few blocks away did he allow himself to check if he had really succeeded. The perfume was there, hidden in his jacket. Raphael felt an intense mixture of relief, pride, and guilt. He had succeeded. Alone, without help, he had executed his first theft. Successfully, he sold the product to one of Diego's contacts and earned 80 reais. That night, he called his mother for the first time since leaving home. "Raphael, my son, how are you? Where are you living?" "I'm fine, Mom. I'm staying at a friend's house, managing to get by. Did you get a job?" Raphael hesitated for a moment. "I did, yes. Some jobs here and there. I'm earning my money." It wasn't completely a lie, he thought. He was really earning money. He just didn't specify how. Konseiku seemed relieved and happy with the news. They talked for a few minutes about trivial things, avoiding more delicate subjects. When he hung up the phone, Raphael felt a little better. At least he hadn't completely lied to his mother. He was really supporting himself, wasn't asking anyone for help. Maybe this was just a phase, a temporary means, until he got something better. What Raphael didn't know was that he was only at the beginning of a downward spiral that would be much harder to stop than he imagined. What began as occasional small thefts quickly transformed into an almost daily routine for Raphael. In just a few weeks, he had become experienced and confident, developing his own techniques and identifying the best locations and times to act. Money came easily, and with it, a dangerous sense of control over his own life. Diego was impressed with how quickly Raphael learned and adapted. "Man, you have talent for this," he would say, counting the money they had earned in another day of work. "It's natural in you." These words, which should have served as a warning, sounded like compliments to Raphael's ears. For the first time in his life, he felt good at something, capable of succeeding at an activity. The fact that this activity was illegal seemed increasingly less relevant, given the practical results he saw. It was then that Diego introduced Raphael to other members of the group. Carlos, a 22-year-old with a history of police encounters. Jefferson, younger but experienced in vehicle theft. And Tiago, the oldest of the group at 26, who apparently coordinated the more elaborate activities. "Raphael is the guy I told you about," said Diego one afternoon when they met at his house. "Smart, brave, learns fast." Tiago observed Raphael with an evaluative look. He was a thin man with visible scars on his arms and a tattoo on his neck that Raphael couldn't completely identify. There was something about him that inspired respect and, at the same time, a certain fear. "I hear you're good at what you do," said Tiago, lighting a cigarette. "Diego told me about some of your jobs. Impressive for someone so new to this." Raphael felt proud of the recognition but also nervous about the attention. "I'm just trying to get by, you know. Everyone here is trying to get by, kid. The difference is how each one does it." Tiago took a long drag on his cigarette. "Do you want to keep stealing little perfumes from pharmacies, or do you want to earn real money?" The question hung in the air for a few seconds. Raphael looked at Diego, who just nodded encouragingly. The other group members watched the conversation in silence, as if it were an initiation ritual. "What kind of money?" Raphael finally asked. Tiago smiled. "The kind that changes your life, but also the kind that requires more courage." In the following days, Tiago explained to Raphael how the group's larger operations worked. No longer small thefts in stores, but planned robberies of residences, cars, and occasionally commercial establishments. The financial return was much greater, but the risks also increased proportionally. The first rule is, never do anything alone. always in pairs or trios, Tiago explained. Second rule, always have an escape route planned. Third rule, if shit hits the fan, everyone takes care of themselves. Raphael listened to everything attentively, fascinated and terrified at the same time. Part of him knew he was crossing a dangerous line, entering territory from which it would be much harder to exit. But another part was excited about the possibility of earning real money, maybe being able to rent his own place, showing everyone he could support himself. His first major operation was on a Saturday night. The target was an upper-middle-class house in a distant neighborhood, where Tiago had information that the residents had traveled for the weekend. Raphael would pair up with Carlos, while Diego and Jefferson would keep watch on the street. "You come in with me, but just observe the first time," Carlos instructed as they headed to the location. "Let me do everything. You just follow me and learn." The house was really big, with a well-maintained garden and an electronic gate. Carlos had keys that, according to him, he had gotten through a contact who worked at a security company. They entered through the back door, using small flashlights to orient themselves in the dark. Raphael had never been inside such a large and well-furnished house. Expensive furniture, latest generation, electronics, paintings on the walls, everything organized with a taste he had never seen up close. For a moment, he forgot he was there to steal and simply observed, fascinated by that lifestyle. "Focus, kid," whispered Carlos, bringing Raphael back to reality. "We're not here to sightsee." Carlos worked with impressive efficiency. He knew exactly where to look for valuable objects, how to disconnect electronic equipment quickly, which items were easier to resell. In less than 30 minutes, they had collected laptops, tablets, jewelry, cash, and some other small but valuable objects. "Always leave the house organized," Carlos explained while working. "If the guys only notice the robbery when they get back from their trip, we gain time before the police start investigating." They left the house the same way they entered, silent and organized. Diego and Jefferson confirmed there was no suspicious movement on the street. They arrived back at Diego's house with a sense of mission accomplished. When Diego arrived to evaluate the result, Raphael could barely contain his anxiety. The amount of valuable objects they had gotten was impressive, far beyond anything he had imagined. "Good work," said Tiago, examining the items. "Raphael, you did well for the first time." Capcom followed instructions. Raphael's share of that robbery was 400 reais. 400 reais for one night's work. It was more money than he had ever seen together in his entire life. That night, for the first time since leaving home, Raphael felt truly powerful. He called his mother the next day. Again, "Mom, I'm managing to save some money. Soon I'll be able to rent my own place." "That's great, my son. I'm so proud of you. I knew you could manage." The pride in Kansuke's voice made Raphael feel both good and terrible at the same time. She was proud of him for being able to support himself, but had no idea how he was doing it. Raphael wondered if he would ever tell her the truth, or if he could get out of that life before it was too late. In the following weeks, Raphael participated in more operations with the group, each one more elaborate than the previous, each one yielding more money. House robberies, car thefts, even some small store robberies. Raphael discovered he had natural abilities for that type of activity. He was observant, agile, kept calm under pressure. The money allowed him to buy better clothes, a new cell phone, and start seriously considering renting his own place. But it also allowed him to develop habits he couldn't sustain before. He began drinking more, going out to parties, spending money on superfluous things that had never crossed his mind before. "You're getting careless," Tiago warned one afternoon, observing Raphael count money from a recent operation. "Easy money makes anyone careless, but careless in our area is synonymous with arrested or dead." Raphael shrugged. "I'm just enjoying myself a little, no problem." But Tiago was right. Raphael was becoming overconfident, too relaxed. He began acting less cautiously, underestimating risks. It was precisely at this moment of excessive confidence that everything began to crumble. The operation that would completely change the course of Raphael's life was planned for a Thursday night. The target was an electronics equipment store in a smaller, less busy shopping mall. It would be a quick operation, get in after closing, take what they could, and get out in less than 15 minutes. Raphael would pair up with Jefferson, while Carlos and Diego would be responsible for external surveillance. Tiago wouldn't participate directly, just coordinate everything from a distance. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. They managed to enter the store without difficulty. The security systems were disabled as planned, and there was a lot of valuable equipment to choose from. Raphael was excited, thinking about the money they would earn from that operation. That's when they heard the sound of sirens approaching. "Shit!" shouted Jefferson. Someone called the police. Raphael felt his blood freeze in his veins. The sirens were getting closer and closer, and they were still inside the store with several pieces of equipment in their hands. They tried to exit through the planned route, but saw police car lights approaching the shopping mall. "This way," said Jefferson, indicating an emergency exit at the back of the store. They ran through the corridors of the closed shopping mall, carrying what they could, trying to find an exit that wasn't being watched. But it was too late. The shopping mall was surrounded. Raphael was arrested right there, inside the store, with stolen equipment in his hands and no possibility of denial. Jefferson managed to escape for a few minutes, but was also captured in the mall's surroundings while being handcuffed and put in the police car. Raphael thought about his mother, about Marcos, about the promises he had made to straighten out his life. He thought about how he had gotten there, about the choices he had made, about the opportunities he had lost. At 19 years old, Raphael was being taken for his first time in prison. Raphael's first night at the police station was an experience he would never forget. The smell of disinfectant mixed with urine, the constant sounds of low conversations and occasional screams, the feeling of being completely vulnerable and exposed. He shared an overcrowded cell with men of all ages, some there for crimes similar to his, others for much more serious offenses. "First time?" asked an older man, observing Raphael's obvious nervousness. "Yeah," Raphael replied, trying not to show all the fear he felt. "You'll get used to it, kid. In here, those who don't adapt, break." Raphael spent the night awake, leaning against the cold cell wall, watching the other prisoners. Some slept as if they were at home. Others talked quietly about their cases. Some simply stared into nothing with empty expressions. He wondered if one day he would also have that naturalness, if that environment would become familiar to him. The next day, he was taken to give his statement. The detective responsible for the case was a middle-aged man with the tired appearance of someone who had seen many cases similar to Raphael's. Rafael Silva Santos, 19 years old, no criminal record. The detective read from the paper in front of him. Arrested in flagrante for qualified theft in a commercial establishment. "First time I see you around here." "Yes, sir. You know, you could get to 2-8 years for this, right? Especially considering that you guys planned it, invaded the place, acted as a group, ... Double quotes. The detective paused, observing Raphael. "But you're young, no record. Depending on how you cooperate, maybe you can get a lesser sentence." Raphael swallowed hard. 2 to 8 years. For the first time, the reality of the consequences of his actions began to truly hit. It wasn't just a matter of spending a few nights at the station and going home. It was his life that was at stake. "What do you want to know, sir?" "I want to know who the others involved are, how you planned this, how many times you've done similar operations. I want to know everything." Raphael hesitated. Part of him wanted to tell everything, cooperate completely in hopes of reducing his sentence. But he also knew that Tiago and the others wouldn't easily forgive a betrayal. And it had been Diego who had taken him in when he had nowhere to go. "I don't know much." It was more of an opportunity that came up. The detective sighed. "Look, Raphael, you seem like an intelligent kid. You're not like the others who come through here, who are already completely lost in the world of crime. You still have a chance to get out of this life, but you need to make intelligent decisions." In the following days, while awaiting the outcome of the process at the station, Raphael received a visit from his mother. It was one of the most difficult moments of his life. Consecu arrived with red eyes from crying, carrying a bag with clean clothes and some sweets that Raphael liked. When she saw him through the bars, she couldn't contain her tears. "My son, what have you done? How did you get here?" Raphael couldn't look directly at her. "You told me you were working, that you were managing to get by honestly. How could you lie to me like this?" The pain in Consecu's voice was worse than any punishment Raphael could receive from the judicial system. Seeing the disappointment in his own mother's eyes, knowing he had broken her trust, that he had wasted all the pride she felt for him. "I tried, Mum. I tried very hard to get work, but I couldn't get anything. And then these opportunities appeared. Opportunities. Raphael, this is crime. You were stealing. I know, Mom. I know I was wrong, but I didn't know what to do. I had no money, couldn't get work. Conceição remained silent for a few minutes, just looking at her son. Raphael could see she was fighting an internal battle, torn between disappointment and maternal love. Marcos was right, she finally said, in a low voice. He said you were going to get into trouble, and I defended you. I said you were a good boy, that you were just going through a difficult phase. Mom... No. Raphael, let me speak. Conceição wiped away her tears. I failed you. As a mother, I failed. Maybe I should have been stricter, should have prepared you better for life. It's not your fault, Mom. The choices were mine. They were, yes, but I should have taught you to make better choices. The visit lasted only 20 minutes, but seemed like an eternity. When Conceição left, Raphael felt completely alone. For the first time since he had started getting involved with crimes, he truly understood the impact of his actions on the people he loved. A week later, Raphael was transferred to the Provisional Detention Center, where he would await his trial. The environment was even harsher than the police station. Hundreds of prisoners, most young like him, some already with extensive criminal histories, others still adapting to the system. Raphael was placed in a cell with 8 people, where there was only space for 6 beds. The newest ones slept on the floor or in shifts. The food was scarce and of terrible quality, hygiene was precarious, and tension was always in the air. What are you? First-timer asked his cellmate, a guy a few years older named Marcelo. Yes, then listen up. In here you have to choose which side to be on. You can't stay neutral. Either you join with a group that protects you, or you become easy prey. Marcelo explained to Raphael how the hierarchy worked inside the prison. There were organized groups, unwritten codes of conduct, punishments for those who didn't respect the internal rules. It wasn't just a matter of serving the sentence. It was a matter of surviving. The problem with first-timers, Marcelo continued, is that you guys arrive here thinking this is temporary, that you'll soon get out and return to normal life. Then you don't adapt, don't learn the rules, and you get screwed. And you, how long have you been here? 3rd time. First time I was 18, like you, I thought it was temporary too. Marcelo laughed bitterly. I got out, came back, got out again, came back again. It's a cycle, man. Once you enter the system, it's very hard to really get out. Raphael spent the first days trying to understand the dynamics of the place. He observed how the more experienced prisoners behaved, how they negotiated favors, how they resolved conflicts. It was a completely new world, with its own rules that no one had taught him. It was during this period that he received another unexpected visit. Diego managed to visit him. Hey man, how are you managing in here? Trying to survive. And you, did you manage to escape? For now, yes, but it's difficult. The police are tightening up, looking for everyone in the group. Tiago sent word that you did well, didn't give anyone up. Raphael nodded. He really hadn't cooperated with the police beyond the basic necessary, not out of loyalty to the group, but because he was too confused to make any definitive decision. Look, Raphael, Diego said, lowering his voice. In here, you're going to find the right contacts, people who can teach you new things, open doors for you when you get out. Don't waste this opportunity. What kind of opportunities? Man, in here there are people who work with much bigger things than what we used to do. Heavy trafficking, bank robbery, kidnapping, people who can include you in operations worth millions. Raphael remained silent. Diego was suggesting that he use the time in prison to make contacts in organized crime, to evolve to more serious and lucrative crimes. It was the complete opposite of using that time to reflect and change his life. I don't know, man. I'm thinking about trying to get out of this life when I get out of here. Diego laughed. Get out for what? To try to find a job again? To earn minimum wage for the rest of your life? Raphael, you have talent for this. It would be stupid to waste it. After Diego's visit, Raphael became even more confused. There were 2 voices in his head, one that said to use that experience as a lesson and try to restart life honestly. Another that said to take advantage of the contacts he could make in prison and professionalize himself in crime. During the following weeks, Raphael carefully observed the other prisoners. There really were people there involved with much more elaborate and lucrative crimes than the small thefts he used to practice. Some spoke openly about million-dollar operations, about complex schemes, about connections with powerful criminal organizations. There were also prisoners who seemed genuinely repentant, who talked about trying to change their lives when they got out. But these were a minority, and Raphael noticed that many of them had said the same thing in previous stays in prison. The reality is that out there's no space for ex-convicts, explained another cellmate. You leave here with a criminal record, nobody wants to give you work, then you go back to crime, because it's the only place that accepts you. But there must be some alternative, Raphael insisted. There might be, but it's much harder. And when you're hungry, without money, without perspective, the difficult doesn't seem like a viable option. Raphael began to understand that he was facing a crossroads that would completely define the rest of his life. He could leave prison and try to start over honestly, facing all the difficulties that implied, or he could use that experience as a kind of crime college, make the right contacts and professionalize himself in more lucrative criminal activities. The choice he would make would determine not only his future, but also the kind of person he would become. Raphael's trial took place for months after his arrest. During this period, he had adapted to the prison routine in a way that scared him. What initially seemed like a hostile and strange environment had become familiar, almost comfortable. He knew the unwritten rules, had his allies, knew how to get favors and how to avoid problems. His court-appointed attorney, a young man who was clearly overworked, managed to reach an agreement with the public prosecutor's office. Raphael would receive a sentence of 2 years and 4 months, with the possibility of serving in a semi-open regime, due to his being a first-time offender and good behavior in prison. You were lucky, the lawyer explained after the sentence. With cooperation and good behavior, you could get out in less than a year. Raphael nodded, but didn't know if he had really been lucky. A year in prison still seemed like an eternity, and he knew he would leave there a different person from the one who had entered. During the months that followed, Raphael found himself in a peculiar position within the prison. He was respected for having kept his mouth shut during interrogation, but was also seen as someone with potential to grow in the world of crime. Several more experienced prisoners approached him, offering teachings and future opportunities. One of them was a 40-year-old man who had spent more than half his life between prisons and freedom. Rogério had a history in bank and armored car robberies, crimes that yielded much more money than the small thefts Raphael used to practice. "Kid, you have the profile for bigger things," Rogério said during an afternoon in the courtyard. "You're intelligent, observant, not violent by nature. These qualities are rare in our field." "Our field?" Raphael asked. "Real organized crime. Not this perfume theft shit you used to do. I'm talking about operations that yield hundreds of thousands, millions." Rogério began to detail to Raphael how the robberies he practiced worked. Months of planning, detailed study of targets, specialized teams, professional equipment. It was a completely different world from the impulsive and poorly planned crimes. Raphael knew, "When I get out of here, in 6 months, I'm going to set up a new team. If you want, you have a guaranteed spot. But you have to be really decided, because it's not a game." The offer greatly tempted Raphael. The idea of earning in a single robbery more money than he had seen in his entire life was seductive, but he also knew that accepting would mean definitively committing to a criminal life with no way back. On the other hand, there were also influences in the opposite direction. The prison chaplain, Father Miguel, occasionally talked with Raphael and other prisoners about possibilities for life change. "Raphael, you're young, intelligent. You can still build a dignified life when you get out of here," the priest said during one of his pastoral visits. "Father, with a criminal record, who's going to give me work? There are resocialization programs, NGOs that help ex-inmates. It's not easy, but it's possible. The question is whether you really want it." Raphael also met Antonio, a 50-year-old prisoner who was serving his last sentence after a lifetime in crime. Antonio had a different perspective from the other more experienced prisoners. "Son, I started like you, young, needing money, without many options. I thought I was going to do some quick things and then stop. That was 30 years ago. And now I have nothing left. Children who don't know me, a wife who abandoned me, parents who died of grief. All the money I earned is long gone. And look where I am, old, sick, alone." Antonio told Raphael about the successive imprisonments, the lost opportunities, the unfulfilled promises to leave crime. "Every time I got out, I said it would be the last, but there was always a good opportunity, a job that would solve my life forever. It never solved anything. These conversations made Raphael reflect deeply on the path he was taking. He could clearly see two possible futures, one where he accepted Rogério's offer and professionalized himself in crime, probably earning a lot of money, but risking spending most of his life in prison. Another where he tried to leave criminal life, facing enormous difficulties, but maintaining the possibility of building something legitimate. The decision became even more urgent when Raphael learned that Diego had been arrested again. This time, for drug trafficking. Jefferson had also been captured, and Carlos had died in a confrontation with police during a poorly planned robbery. "See, that's how it ends when you stay in amateurism," Rogério commented upon hearing the news. "In crime, you have to be professional or be nothing." But Raphael also thought about his mother, who continued visiting him regularly, despite the initial disappointment. Canseco had never stopped showing love for him, even after everything that had happened. In recent visits, she talked about how she was trying to convince Marcos to let Raphael come home when he got out of prison. Marcos said that maybe you need a new chance, she told him one afternoon. He's willing to talk, as long as you're really decided to change. The possibility of returning home, of trying to rebuild family relationships, was something Raphael hadn't seriously considered. He had assumed that bridge was definitely burned. Rogério's offer had a deadline. "Next month I'm getting out of here. If you want to join the team, you have to give me an answer by then. After that, the spot goes to someone else." Raphael spent weeks weighing the options. He talked with different prisoners, analyzed each one's life stories, tried to imagine where he would be in 10, 20 years in each possible scenario. The final decision came in a way he didn't expect. During one night, he witnessed a fight between prisoners that ended with one of them being seriously stabbed. Seeing the bloodied young man on the cell floor, Raphael viscerally understood that this life meant constant violence, permanent risks, a future where premature death was a real possibility. The next day, he looked for Rogério. "I've decided I'm not going to accept your offer." Rogério didn't seem surprised. "I figured. You don't have the profile for the heavy life anyway. Going to try to be a law-abiding citizen." "I'm going to try. Good luck, kid. You'll need it." Raphael also looked for Father Miguel. "Father, I want to know more about those resocialization programs you mentioned. Are you sure? It's not an easy path." "I am. I want to try to build a different life when I get out of here." The priest smiled. "Then let's start working on that." In the months that followed until his release, Raphael dedicated himself to preparing for life outside prison. He participated in professional workshops offered in jail, completed high school through the education program for prisoners, and established contact with NGOs that helped ex-inmates find work. He also maintained regular conversations with the priest about his motivations, his fears, his hopes for the future. "Resocialization begins in the mind," Father Miguel said. "You need to genuinely believe that you can be a different person." The day of release came on a Tuesday morning, almost exactly 1 year after his arrest. Raphael left the prison carrying only a small bag with his personal belongings and a list of contacts from organizations that could help him. Canseco was waiting for him at the gate, with tears in her eyes and a timid smile. "My son, welcome back to the world." Raphael hugged his mother, feeling a complex mixture of relief, gratitude, and terror. He was free, but also completely uncertain about what would come next. He knew he had made the right decision in rejecting criminal life, but he also knew that the challenges he would face would be enormous. The first test would be at home, facing Marcos and trying to rebuild family relationships. The second would be finding work with a criminal record. The third would be resisting the temptations that would certainly appear when life became difficult again. But for the first time in a long time, Raphael felt there was a real possibility of building something positive with his life. The journey of redemption was just beginning. The arrival home was a moment charged with unspoken tensions. Marcos was in the living room when Raphael and Canseco entered, and the greeting between the two men was formal, cordial, but clearly uncomfortable. "Raphael," Marcos said, extending his hand, "your mother told me you want to try again." "I do, and I appreciate the opportunity. Don't thank me yet. Let's see how you behave from now on." Marcos had established some conditions for Raphael to remain in the house. He needed to look for work immediately, couldn't receive visits without prior authorization, had a curfew to come home, and any sign of involvement with suspicious activities would result in definitive expulsion. They're tough rules, Marcos admitted, but necessary. You lost our trust. Now you need to regain it. Rafael accepted all conditions without protest. He knew he wasn't in a position to negotiate and honestly thought the demands were fair, considering everything that had happened in the first days at home. Rafael dedicated himself exclusively to looking for employment. He visited dozens of commercial establishments, filled out countless application forms, participated in several interviews, but the answer was always the same: "We'll analyze your profile and get back to you." A polite euphemism for "we're not going to hire you." The problem was always the criminal record. Even for the simplest jobs, which required only elementary education and no experience, employers made a point of checking candidates' criminal records, and qualified theft wasn't exactly the kind of history that inspired confidence. "It's harder than I imagined," Rafael confessed to Consecu after 2 weeks of fruitless searches. "Don't give up, my son. Something will come up." But Rafael was beginning to understand why so many ex-prisoners returned to crime. Society demanded that they resocialize, but at the same time closed all doors for this to happen with dignity. It was a cruel cycle, and apparently without exit. It was through the contacts he had made with Father Miguel that Rafael finally got his first opportunity. An NGO that worked with ex-inmate resocialization recommended his name to a small mechanic shop whose owner had a social project of giving second chances to people with criminal history. Sojrom was a mechanic of about 60 years who had expanded his shop and needed an assistant. He knew well the challenges faced by ex-prisoners, as one of his own sons had gone through the prison system years before. "Boy, I'll be clear with you," Sujoo said during the conversation that served as an interview. "I can't pay much, and the work is heavy. You'll start by cleaning, organizing, serving coffee to customers. If you show you're trustworthy, gradually you'll learn the trade." The salary was less than minimum wage, but Rafael accepted immediately. It was the first door that opened, the first person willing to give him a real chance. In the first months at the shop, Rafael dedicated himself like he had never dedicated himself to anything. He arrived before schedule, left after everyone had already gone, made sure to keep everything clean and organized. Gradually, Sojrom began teaching him some basic mechanics techniques. "You have a knack for this," the shop owner observed after a few months. "And, more importantly, you have commitment. I'm going to raise your salary and give you more responsibilities." The raise was small, but represented much more than money to Rafael. It was recognition that he was on the right path, that there were people willing to bet on his change. Parallel to work, Rafael also began studying at night. He had realized that to have real chances of professional growth, he needed more qualification. He enrolled in a technical course in automotive mechanics and also began taking basic English classes. The routine was exhausting. Work from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., classes from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., studying at home until late. But Rafael felt good about that rush. It was the first time in his life that he was genuinely building something, investing in a better future. At home, the relationship with Marcos gradually improved. The stepfather observed Rafael's commitment and began to relax some of the stricter rules he had established. "I'm seeing that you're taking it seriously this time," Marcos said one night during dinner. "Keep it up, and things will work out." Consecu couldn't hide the pride she felt for her son. "I knew you could do it," she said whenever she could. "I always knew you were a good boy." But not everything was rosy in Rafael's new life. There were moments of deep discouragement, when he wondered if all that effort would really be worth it. The money was little, growth prospects were slow, and he saw colleagues of the same age, already professionally established while he was just beginning. The most difficult test came about 6 months after his release. Rafael was returning from work when he encountered Diego on the street. The former friend had gotten out of prison a few weeks ago and was already involved again with criminal activities. "Rafael, man, good to see you. I heard you're working, honestly. How's it going?" "It's going well, Diego. Difficult, but good. You must be earning well, right? I heard mechanics make good money." Rafael laughed bitterly. "Not quite. I'm still earning less than minimum wage, but it's a start." Diego made an expression of surprise. "Less than minimum wage? Man, you're killing yourself working to earn peanuts. Remember how much we used to make in our jobs?" "I remember. But I also remember where that led me. Look, Raphael, I have a proposal for you. It's nothing too risky, just a quick job. In one night, you earn more than you're earning in a month. At that shop, Raphael felt a chill in his stomach. He had imagined this moment would come, but still didn't feel completely prepared to face it. What kind of job? Nothing violent. Relax. It's just a house. We know the owner's traveled. Get in, take some things, get out. Simple as that. Your part would be about 3,000 reais. 3,000 reais. Raphael calculated mentally. It was almost 4 months of the salary he received at the garage. With that money, he could pay off some debts, buy decent clothes, maybe even help his mother with household expenses. The temptation was real and powerful. Let me think about it, Diego. Sure, man, but don't take too long. The opportunity is for this week. Raphael spent the following days tormented by the proposal. During work, his mind constantly wandered to Diego's offer, 3,000 reais for one night's work, versus less than 1,000 reais for an entire month of honest effort. You're distracted today, observed Mr. Joe during an afternoon. Any problems? Raphael hesitated for a moment, but decided to be honest. Mr. Joe, can I talk to you about something? Of course, young man, go ahead. Raphael told him about the meeting with Diego and the proposal he had received. He explained the temptation he was feeling and his internal conflicts. Mr. Joe listened to everything in silence, without judgments or interruptions. When Raphael finished, the mechanic was thoughtful for a few minutes. Raphael, I'm going to tell you a story. My son, whom I mentioned to you, went through the same thing you're going through. He got out of jail, tried to straighten out, but the temptations were great. I offered him work here at the garage, but he refused. Said he needed quick money, that he couldn't afford to earn little. And what happened? He went back to crime. Said it would be just one more time, just to get structured. 3 months later he was arrested again. Today he's serving an 8 sentence for armed robbery. Mr. Jean paused, looking directly at Raphael. The difference between you two is that he came to tell me this after he had already decided. You came to tell me before deciding. This shows that you're still fighting against that life. You haven't given in to it. But the money, Mr. Joe, it's tempting. It is tempting. But let me ask you a question. What do you want to be 5 years from now? Do you want to be a respected mechanic, with your own garage, with a family, with a dignified life? Or do you want to be in jail again, or worse? Raphael remained silent, absorbing his boss's words. Another thing, Raphael, that quick money is an illusion. You'll earn 3,000 reais, but you'll spend it quickly. Then you'll need another 3,000, then another 3,000. It's a cycle that has no end. Honest money is little, but it's lasting. It builds something solid. That night, Raphael talked to his mother about his internal struggle. Mom, sometimes I wonder if all this effort is worth it. I work so hard and earn so little. Conseyaku held her son's hands. Raphael, money isn't everything in life. When you were in prison, I preferred to visit you there, earning 0 reais, than to see you free, earning millions stolen. Why? Because when you were in prison, I still had hope. Hope that you would change, that you would become the man I always knew you could be. If you go back to crime, I lose that hope forever. His mother's words touched Raphael deeply. He understood that his choice didn't affect only himself, but all the people who loved him and believed in his capacity for change. The next day, Raphael looked for Diego and gave his answer. Diego, thanks for the offer, but I'm not going to accept. Are you sure? It's easy money, man. I'm sure. I'm trying to build a different life. Diego shrugged. Your choice. But when you get tired of earning misery, look for me. Rejecting the proposal was a milestone in Raphael's journey. He proved to himself that he was genuinely committed to change, that he could resist temptations when they appeared. In the following months, Raphael dedicated himself even more to work and studies. His effort began to bear fruit. Mr. Joe gave him new responsibilities, increased his salary again, and began teaching him more advanced mechanical techniques. You have potential to be an excellent mechanic, said Mr. Joe. If you continue like this, in 2 years you could be earning a decent salary. In 5 years you could have your own garage. Raphael also began to relate better with his co-workers, who initially kept a certain distance due to his past. Gradually, they realized that he was a trustworthy and hard-working person. 1 year after his release, Raphael received news that would completely change his perspective. Diego had been killed during a failed robbery. The operation he had offered to Raphael went wrong. There was a confrontation with police, and Diego was hit by a bullet. The news deeply shook Raphael. He thought about how it could have been him in Diego's place if he had accepted the proposal. He understood that his decision to reject crime had literally saved his life. At Diego's funeral, Raphael met other acquaintances from his criminal days. Many were imprisoned, others dead, a few still active but visibly worn down by the life they led. None of them had managed to build something lasting or positive. "You were smart to get out of that life," commented an old acquaintance. "Look where we ended up." 2 years after his release, Raphael had become a competent and respected mechanic at Mr. Joe's garage. His dedication and honesty had won over not only his boss, but also a loyal clientele who specifically asked for him to take care of their cars. "Raphael, I need to talk to you," said Mr. Joe one morning. "I'm thinking about retiring in the next few years. I wanted to know if you're interested in taking over the garage." Raphael could hardly believe what he was hearing. "What do you mean, Mr. Joe? You know the business, customers trust you, you have vision for improvements. We can make an agreement where you gradually take over, paying for the garage in installments." It was an opportunity Raphael had never imagined. Having his own garage, being his own boss, building something truly his. But it was also an enormous responsibility. "I need to think, Mr. Joe. It's a big responsibility, of course, but think about it fondly. You deserve this chance." That night, Raphael talked to his family about the proposal. Marcos, who had become a true ally over the past years, was enthusiastic. "Raphael, this is the opportunity of your life. You worked hard to get here, but what if it goes wrong? What if I can't manage the business?" "Son," said Consecu, "you've already proven you can overcome challenges much greater than this. Managing a garage is easy compared to rebuilding an entire life." Raphael also talked to Father Miguel, who had become a kind of spiritual mentor throughout his journey. "Father, do I deserve this opportunity? After everything I did, ... Raphael, redemption isn't about deserving or not. It's about transformation. You genuinely transformed yourself. Now it's time to reap the fruits of that transformation." After a week of reflection, Raphael accepted Mr. Joe's proposal. They would begin a 6-month transition period, during which Raphael would gradually assume the administrative responsibilities of the garage. The process was challenging. Raphael had to learn about financial management, inventory control, supplier relationships, labor issues, but he faced each challenge with the same determination he had used to rebuild his life. 6 months later, Raphael officially became the owner of Rafael Santos Garage. He had insisted on keeping Santos in the name as a tribute to his journey of overcoming. On the day of the official inauguration under his management, Raphael looked around the garage and could barely believe everything that had happened. 3 years before, he was imprisoned, without prospects, without hope. Now he was the owner of a prosperous business, respected in the community, with a dignified and stable life. Consecu cried with emotion during the small inauguration ceremony. "My son, I'm so proud of you, you made it." Marcos, who had become a real father figure to Raphael, was also emotional. "Raphael, you taught us that it's never too late to start over. You're an example to all of us." 5 years after his release, Raphael was a completely transformed man. The garage was prospering. He had hired 2 employees and was considering opening a second location. He had also married Marina, a teacher he met during an entrepreneurship course, and they were expecting their first child. "Honey, there's someone at the garage asking for you," Marina said one afternoon. Said he's an old acquaintance. Raphael went to the garage and found Jefferson waiting for him. His former crime partner had recently been released from prison and was clearly going through difficulties. "Raphael, man, I almost didn't recognize you. You've changed a lot." "Jefferson, what a surprise. How are you?" "To be honest, bad. I got out of jail 2 months ago and can't get anything. Nobody wants to give work to an ex-convict." Raphael immediately understood the situation. It was exactly what he had faced years before. The same struggle, the same difficulties. "Do you really want to work honestly?" "I do, man. I'm tired of this life. I want to try to change, like you did." Raphael observed his old friend. He could see the desperation in his eyes, but also a spark of genuine hope. He decided to give Jefferson the same chance that Mr. Joe had given him. "I can give you an opportunity here at the garage. The salary is low at first, and the work is heavy. But if you show commitment, things can improve." Jefferson's eyes filled with tears. "Really? You'd do that for me?" "I would. But there's one condition: any involvement with illegal activities, and you're out immediately. You can count on it, Raphael. I really want to change my life." Giving Jefferson an opportunity was one of the most gratifying decisions Raphael had ever made. Seeing his old friend striving to rebuild his life, facing the same challenges he had faced, made Raphael understand that his journey had a greater purpose. "You're making a real difference in people's lives," Marina observed one night. "It's not just your life that you transformed." Raphael began to get more actively involved with ex-convict resocialization programs. He visited prisons to talk to prisoners who were close to release, offered internships at his garage, helped other entrepreneurs understand the importance of giving second chances. "Nobody is born a criminal," Raphael would say during his lectures. "People become criminals due to circumstances, lack of opportunities, bad choices, but it's always possible to change, as long as there's real determination and people willing to help." 10 years after his release, Raphael had become a reference in his community. The garage was prosperous. He had a happy family and had helped dozens of ex-convicts find work and rebuild their lives. One morning, he received an unexpected call from Father Miguel. "Raphael, the prison where you were incarcerated wants to invite you to give a lecture to the inmates. Would you accept?" Raphael hesitated for a moment. Returning to that place would bring many memories, not all pleasant, but it would also be an opportunity to show other prisoners that change was possible. "I accept, Father. It would be an honor." On the day of the lecture, Raphael entered the prison with mixed feelings. The smell, the sounds, the atmosphere, everything was exactly as he remembered. But now he was there as a visitor, as an example of overcoming. The auditorium was packed with prisoners of all ages. Raphael could see in their faces the same mixture of desperation, revolt, and hope that he himself had felt years before. "My name is Raphael Santos," he began. 10 years ago, I was sitting where you are now." Raphael told his complete story. The expulsion from home, involvement with crime, imprisonment, temptations, difficulties of resocialization, and finally, building a new life. "I won't lie to you," he said. "Getting out of crime and building an honest life is difficult. Very difficult. Society doesn't make it easy. Money is scarce at first. Temptations are great, but it's possible, and it's worth it." A prisoner raised his hand. "But how do you get work with a record? Nobody wants to hire ex-convicts." "It's true. Most don't want to, but some do. There are people willing to give second chances. There are resocialization programs. The important thing is not to give up at the first, second, 10th rejection." Another prisoner asked, "What if family doesn't accept us back?" "Some families really don't accept us, but many do, as long as they see real change. And even if family doesn't accept, you can build a new family, new relationships based on the person you became, not the person you were." The lecture lasted 2 hours, with many questions and debates. Raphael could see that his words were touching some prisoners, planting seeds of hope and determination. At the end, a young man approached him. He was very similar to Raphael when he was imprisoned, young, intelligent, but clearly lost. "Mr. Raphael, do you really believe that someone like me can change their life?" Raphael looked into the young man's eyes and saw himself years before. "I do believe it, but only you can make that change happen. Nobody can do it for you." "How do I start?" "You start by making the decision. Real decision, not empty promise. Then, you accept that it's going to be difficult, but prepare to face the difficulties and seek help. There are people willing to help those who really want to change." Raphael left his card with the young man. "If, when you get out of here, you're really decided to change, look for me. Maybe I can give you an opportunity."